And I'm very curious to see what our panel make of this fairly radical decision. So 7 forwards, 1 back. They have done this twice. They did this at Twickenham against New Zealand and they were 21-0 up before anybody from the bench came on. So in that sense, untested. They did it against Ireland. I didn't feel there was a great consensus afterwards as to whether it was decisive either way. So this is not road tested. And they have unfurled this in their last game as a coaching ticket, in the biggest game of everybody's lives. And they swear we have all our bases covered. But obviously, Rob, the point has been made. An injury or certainly 2 in the back line and all hell will break loose. So the question is this worth the risk? Why have these very smart people taken this chance?
Well, we'll only know the answer to that question after the game.
Yeah.
And it'll be either or. This is without doubt the boldest bench selection in the history of World Cup. And that's sub-statement.
And therefore in the history of the game.
In the history of the game. Jacques says, with your bench selection, there's always risks. Well, I can tell you there's not as much of a risk with a 5-3 split as there is with a 7-1. I like what they've done. I think how they have advanced the tactics of the game, the thought they put into those changes. What is the messaging to the guys who start the game? There's something very nice about a player if a coach comes to you and says, you're on for 40 to 50 minutes and I want you to absolutely empty the tank and give me everything. This South Africa team have played much tougher games than New Zealand and they have looked a little bit tired, some of the players in the pack, in the last few weeks. And understandably so, considering the performances and the level of physicality in the games that they've gone through. So. Yeah. We're not going to know the answer until after the game, but it is unbelievably bold.
It sure is. So they're asked about this at length in the press conference, Matt, and they say, well, what if Faf de Klerk goes down at 9? They say Cheslin Colby can move from the wing. He's played 7s in that position. What if your out half goes down? Colby could go to 10 or Willemse. And then if a centre or wing goes down, they'll move their flanker, Quagga Smith, into the back line. So their argument is all bases are covered should the worst happen. What's your coach's perspective on this?
Well, let's twist this on its head a little bit. You've won a quarterfinal, you've won a semi-final. You sack your 9 and your 10 and you don't include them in the match day 23. That's what they've done. You then bring in the bench 9. You've got no other, you've got Willie Roux, 1 fullback on the bench. You then also say, you've got 1 hooker who has to play 80 minutes. That's what they've been doing. And to me, I would take the opposite view. They're very worried about New Zealand. They're very worried about their fatigue in their forwards, and they're putting a grip on the bench because they know they're fatigued. Okay. Their games have been harder than the Kiwis. Not a lot. I mean, the Irish game was a tough game. I remember the last few minutes of that. Everyone was shot. But the Argentinian game for New Zealand wasn't as hard. What are they scared of? They are scared of the pace of the game that New Zealand can put on this. Now, I think the rain isn't necessarily going to stop New Zealand, but it might slow the pace of the game down, which I think is a plus for the South Africans. But that, to me, if you've won your quarter and your semi, and all of a sudden you change your halves completely and you change your bench radically, you're saying we've got to do something pretty different and take risks, as Robbie said, to win this game.
So it suggests worry.
I absolutely love it. And, no risk, no champagne. And they've decided on their game plan. I think they didn't trust their 10 anymore, and I think they were right to get rid of them. And with Pollard coming in, I think it's an improvement. Now, we won't know if this risk is worth taking until the end of the game. And Rassie Erasmus is either going to come out at the end of this, vaunted as an absolute rugby intellectual giant, or he's going to be derided as someone who's just drinking his own Kool-Aid, really.
As we say, mate, Sydney or the bush, isn't it? It's all or nothing.
And there is risk involved in it. But I think they've identified the whole way through this tournament what their skill set is, what their differentiator is from other teams, and they've just lent into that fully. And it's a good bet. I think it's potentially a good bet because they aren't. I don't think they could play with more sort of individual flair. They could play with more expression. They don't. It's not their their style of play. And I think, the tactics of rugby is very homogenised as well. This is brilliant. It's a departure from that. And what we're seeing is two completely different rugby cultures and philosophies. And, they say, styles make fights. Styles and cultures make finals, and that's what we're seeing, a clash of cultures as well as clash of two massive rivals.
There's a couple of stats that we should throw in here that over the 160 minutes of the quarter and semi, New Zealand have led for about 145 of those minutes. South Africa have only led for about 18. So South Africa late in games through scrum penalties get themselves back in games and have won these two tight games through penalties late in games. So what Shane's saying, I totally agree with. They're going for scrum penalties late in the game to get either the shot at 3, thus they pick Pollard, or they kick up the field, line out, maul, go for a try. What is missing is backlines. So that they are basically saying when our backs aren't, all they've got to do is defend.
Which, by the way, they've done very well, because in the second halves against Ireland, France and England, combine those 3 second halves, 120 plus minutes of rugby, they have conceded 0 tries.
Absolutely.
They've been brilliant in second halves.
Absolutely.
You're going to take us through breakdown. This is